All right. Hello, everybody. Hope you guys are having a great day. Today, I decided to go live once again. If you guys don't know, I went live last week to go over and start the process of working on Leaping Daisy, one of my new clients. And today, I'm excited because I'm going to be sharing with you guys what we ended up creating for the client, as well as talking a little bit about my process. Now, please let me know if you guys are tuning in here on Behance, if you guys can hear me okay. The same goes for everybody who are tuning in on Instagram. One little bit here. If you guys have any questions whatsoever during your stream, please let me know, and I will try to answer them as quickly and as promptly as possible. Remember, I'm doing two streams here. I'm doing one on Behance and one on Instagram. So I'm really excited about this because this has been something that I've been trying to get back into doing for a while now, and I'm really excited about it. Okay, so without further ado, let's actually jump in. Let me grab my Envision link here. What we're going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to take a look at, once I can pull it up, we're going to take a look at, where we started with this project. We're going to be starting with the stylescapes that we created for the client, and we're going to go from there. So let me jump over to the web here. Awesome. Hopefully you guys will be able to see this. So this was the stylescape that we started with for the client. Let me zoom out a little bit so you guys can see it okay. Now, when I originally started working with the client, we put together two stylescapes. We put together this one here, and we put together this one. Now, ultimately, the client decided they wanted to go in this direction here with Leaping Daisy, which is a more modern sans serif, simple, and somewhat abstract version for the branding. But at the same time, keeping that rustic and natural, timeless feel. Again, by the way, if you guys have any questions, please let me know in the chat here on Behance and here on Instagram. I will try to answer any questions you guys have, but just remember I'm having to jump between the two platforms. So with this in mind, with keeping that simple, modern, streamlined feel to it, we decided to go, we did decide to keep a couple of elements from the first stylescape here. This one was a lot more rustic. It was a lot more weathered, and the client wasn't the biggest fan of it, but he did like certain characteristics of it. So keeping in mind both of these stylescapes, what the client wanted and what the client liked and what he didn't like, we went ahead and we started working on the next part of this. I'm gonna move this over so I can pull it up and make sure it's the correct one. By the way, how is everybody doing? Please let me know how you guys are doing on the chat. It is not for a website. This is actually for branding. We're working on logo design and overall brand system for Leaping Daisy. Okay, awesome. So we got this set up. All right, so let's jump over into Adobe Illustrator. I'm going to move this over here so you guys can see everything. So this is actually the full deliverable that I shared with the client today. We went over this. In fact, the cool thing about this client that I don't necessarily see with every one of my clients is that our meetings are super short. Normally with a client, especially going through branding exercise like this, you usually will see a meeting last between 45 minutes to an hour and a half, depending. Every single meeting I've ever had with this client has been about 20 to 30 minutes or so, which even to me is crazy because I'm like, it's a good thing because we go straight to the point, we get everything done, and then he comes back and gives me feedback later on. But it's just an interesting factoid to add to this project. One second, let me text my wife. There we go. All right, so when we take a look at this here, the first bit that we have is just sketches. These are all sketches that came directly from mine and the other designer that I'm working with on this project, Damien. All of these came directly from our sketchbooks. All of these are just purely sketches. They're not final. None of these are final logos. It's just basically a collage of everything that we were thinking, everything that was coming out of our head. I basically took pictures of all these sketches, brought it into Photoshop, made the pages completely white, darkened up everything, and then live traced them here in Illustrator. Let's see, a question came in here on Instagram. Do you start a branding project like this with a mood board or some visual way of exploring the expectations before starting the design process? Yes. So if we jump back over to the web here and we look at, we started with a stylescape. So a stylescape is similar to a mood board. The only difference is that you're actually taking elements and you're putting them together in a more designed fashion so that your client can get an idea of how everything works together as an overall system. Now with a mood board, you're basically just taking a bunch of images, placing them side by side, and trying to see what works and what doesn't. I first learned about stylescapes from The Future. That's Futur, and Chris Doe on YouTube. I would definitely suggest checking they have a course on there. And if anybody wants a link to that course or anything, please feel free to send me a DM on Instagram and I will be sure to send you a link to that. But I've found in every branding project that I've done since working on since starting to implement this into my process, that there's just a whole lot, everything's a whole lot easier. I'm able to figure out what the client wants early on. And so usually that first round of actual exploration, like what we're doing now, turns out so much better. So let me jump over here back into Illustrator. So the one thing that I took from the stylescape is that I wanted to try a lot of different things, but I also wanted to try and create things that were simple, possibly simple shapes, possibly patterns and everything like that. And so we went from there. Interesting comment. Have you ever had a client who didn't like any of your ideas? Yes, I have. Let me jump over here. When I was my first job in the design world, I was working at a branding studio, and the worst project I ever had, and I'm trying to think if a project has come close to being this bad before. Yeah, I've had a couple of close calls since then, but my worst project when I was working there, we ended up going through 5 rounds, like what you're going to see here on Illustrator. Went through 5 rounds of branding, and none of them hit the mark. The client wasn't happy with anything that we were sharing, anything that we were putting out there, and so we just were keep going until finally things just kind of fell apart on the project. My boss ended up saying that he was going to sell this one specific idea that the client had already said no to, and that ultimately ended up making them stop the project completely. And so I have had projects where a client didn't like any of my ideas. That client though, especially at the beginning, they were very humble about it. They were like, that's okay. That's okay if we don't like the ideas that you're sharing here. Let's keep going. It wasn't until you stopped producing new ideas and you started pushing old ideas, that's when things really started melting down. All right, so let's jump back into Illustrator. Let's see. Great questions, everybody. All right, so let's get down into the next part of it. So the first part is just sketches. I don't really go into too much detail there. I don't, put any reference numbers. The client can go through and comment on Envision, on any specific sketches that he likes or that he might want us to look into in the future. But the first part that I always share with the client is typography. Let me pull, no, I'm not going to pull this down because it will affect what you see on Behance. But what we have here is we have 5 different typefaces. Now, these typefaces are the ones that I decided would be the best option for the logo type. For those of you who don't know logo type, the logo type is basically the word mark. So anything in the logo that has typography, specifically the name. So here we're looking at Leaping Daisy is the name of the brand of the client. And so that's what we're focusing on here. Now, my 2 favorite ones out of here was Bicyclette. I can't pronounce it fully, so I'm probably butchering it. And then Rift. These were my two favorites for this. I also liked oops, I actually put the wrong name here, so that's wrong. It's Naive Land, I think. Is that what it was? Let's see. Yeah, Naive Line Sands is what this is called. Oops, that's not good. Luckily, I say it down below. Naive Lines Sands. There we go. I say it down below what the name of it, so that's okay. But these two up here were my two favorites, and the runner-up was Naive Lines Sands. But what I like to do here, the reason why I like to call these out is because I want the client to know that we're not just sticking to one or two options. We're actually looking at multiple typefaces for the logo type. How do you get motivated to do this? I know it's a career, but I have had art block for a month. So with stuff like this, with a lot of the stuff, I get artist block, I get creative block a lot, especially when it comes to designing. Sometimes there's days where I have no creative juices flowing at all. And so sometimes it is hard to get motivated and to get things rolling when it comes to design work, when it comes to projects. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll just take a break, I'll take a nap even, and I'll try to get my mind out of the mindset that that I'm trying to do. When I was working on Leaping Daisy, there was a couple times where I had literally no creative juices flowing whatsoever. There were times where I was sitting there and I was like, what am I going to do? How am I going to solve this? What am I going to create for this? And ultimately what happened was I would sit down and I would just take out my sketchbook. In fact, let me grab that here so you guys can see. So I would grab my sketchbook, and you guys are going to see exactly the pages for that project. So like if we hold this up here, let's see if we can get this focus right. This is the first page of Leaping Daisy. I literally just started drawing out daisies. The other designer that I was working with, Damien, he shared a page of sketches. And so I took that and it ended up leading to a bunch of my inspiration. And you can see here, some of this took, a couple hours to do, just looking at reference material and, just creating as much as possible, getting as much stuff on the page as possible. And most of the stuff never actually made it to Illustrator. It never made it to the actual artboard or anything. But it's all about just getting out any and all ideas, even if they're repeated ideas, even if they're ideas that, aren't going to be the right solution. And so you're going to see some of that actually in the Illustrator file here in a second, that there are some ideas that contradict even the route that we know that we should take with this brand. And I did it specifically for comparing and contrasting. So let's jump back in here. So once we establish the 5 typefaces, we then start moving into marks. And it also is good to mention that for those of you who tuned in last week on Friday, I think was it Friday? No, it was Thursday. When you guys tuned in last week on Thursday, I believe a couple of these may have been on that stream. I know Naive Lines was on there, and I also believe Industry was as well. I think those were typefaces I was using before. Let's see, I have an art assignment, and I only have 1.5 out of the 5 sketches done, and it's due Monday, but I have no inspiration. So what I would suggest is if you actually have quite a few days before you have to get everything done, I would actually take the next day or two and not do anything with that project. Just like do everything else that you have to do, ignore that project for the next couple of days, and then come back to it and sit down and focus, put on music, put on whatever you can that will give you, that will, put your mind in a perfect flow state. And that hopefully should work. All right, so let's jump into the next part. The next part, and this is the part that a lot of people tend to like, it's the mark exploration. So what we see here, I have, I think, a total of 21. I'll just go ahead and scan through these so you guys can see all of these different marks that we ended up sharing with the client. And some people, they ask me, they're like, do you really go through and show the client this many marks, this many examples? At the beginning, I actually like to do that. The reason why I show this many is because I like to cover my basis on everything that the client sees, give that client ideas, and I even tell them exactly which ones I don't think will work, but I wanted to show them to compare and contrast the overall designs. Now, sometimes that works perfect, sometimes it doesn't. It depends on the type of client. I know with this client that showing a lot of ideas like this is the better option to do. So what I was talking about earlier about things I knew weren't going to make the final cut, for instance here, let me move this over so everybody can see it here on Instagram. 10 and 11 here. This is by far one of my favorites of all of these logos. It's not my #1 favorite, but it is one of my favorites, and it's also the favorite of my wife. This one here, like, I knew he wouldn't go for, but we both actually discussed it in the meeting, and he actually really liked it. His only thing was, he said that this was something, he likes this logo, he thinks it's a great direction, but it doesn't follow with what he's wanting to do with the brand. If, it was something different, if he had different ideas for the brand, then he would say this would actually be perfect for it, but that's the reason why it's not going to make the cut. The same thing goes with something like 12 here, or even number 21, which this was actually created by Damien, who's helping me out with the project. The ultimate favorite from our discussions today was option 1. And the reason why I put it in #1 spot was because I actually had a feeling that this was going to be the favorite of the client. The reason I believed it was going to be the favorite was because it's super simple and it also has multiple symbolism. So when you look at it, the first thing you think of is a flower or a sun. But the interesting part, and this was the part that really stuck with the client, a wagon wheel. So Leaping Daisy is a ranch type of experience. It's like almost like an adult summer camp that my client is wanting to develop in the Sierra Nevadas in California. And so this idea of it not being just a sun or a flower, but also a wagon wheel, harkens back to the rustic and timeless era that he's looking for, with also staying very simplistic and modern. And so it's something that really jumped out to him. And he even liked the idea of it expanding into like a flower, like in 2, 3, and 4, but also using it by itself in other examples that you're going to see below. Let's see, we got Kuhan Sathazivam. Sorry, I know I butchered your name. I really apologize. Tuning in from Malaysia, looking for a designer to help curate a logo. We'll definitely check your work, Rocky. Thanks for streaming it live as well. No problem. Thank you so much. Yeah, by all means, if you want to send me a message on Instagram or here on Behance, I'd be happy to take a look at what you're looking for. I am actually almost booked up for the rest of the year. Actually, I'm really lucky in that fact. But please, I will, by all means, love to hear what you're looking for. Okay, so out of these, though, like I said, anything that we see here that's very simplistic, very simple, it's all of that is something that the client is looking for. So things like 10, 11, and 12, even 15 here, and 21, these are what I call a contrasting example. And what it does is it also allows us to test what the client is looking for specifically, but also it helps us to narrow down on the specific idea that we know will probably work for the client. All right. And also, one last thing that I'll note here, 18, 19, and 20 was also favorites of the client as well as favorites of me, because it's not necessarily good for a logo, but it is good for a supporting element. And so that's something that we discussed, of using some of these marks and symbols as supporting elements, not as just the main logo. One second, let me take a quick sip of water here. That's the thing, whenever you're doing these live streams, you gotta stay hydrated. especially when you have two bright lights pointing down on you. All right, so let's go down into the next part. So we've looked at typography, we've looked at the marks. The next part of this is going down and looking at how they both come together. So in this area, let me move my phone so everybody on Instagram can check this out as well. As we start going through, we see how the marks pair with the typography. Now, when I first was looking at this typeface bicyclette, I really liked it, especially when it was paired with the simplistic marks, because of the fact that it feels very streamlined, very modern, very simple. When it's paired with other typefaces as well, it also comes off feeling nice and simple. Wow, we have 13 people tuning in on Behance and 10 people tuning in on Instagram. This is great. By the way, for those of you who are tuning in on Behance, please say hello down below in the comments. And if you guys have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to ask them in the chat. I'd be happy to answer any questions, especially as I'm going through this, because I think it's good, especially if you're wondering why I share things in this specific format. Or if you have any design-related questions, please feel free to ask away. All right, so as we go through here, we can see, just like up above, the simplistic wagon wheel, as the client started calling it, mark, it really dominates a lot of these examples. But then we also contrast it with how the flower from 10 above flows with this other typeface, naive line sans. Now, when I first put these together, I really was excited about this. I thought that this was actually going to be a great example. I knew it wasn't going to fit perfectly with what the client was looking for, but I knew it was also a good example of how we could go the opposite direction. Do you also color in the logos for the final product or just black and white? So in this first type of exploration round that I share with the client, I try not to show color whatsoever. Everything is black and white because we want to focus on the typography, on the marks, on all this stuff. And then in the second round, what we're going to be starting next month, that's when we're actually going to start applying color to this. So if we scroll down here, we actually start seeing what we call, wow, why am I having all of a sudden a, a brain fart here, type lockups. So I sometimes will call these badges. Some people call them badges. Some people call them type lockups. What I distinguish between a badge and a type lockup is a badge usually will have a more defined border, and a type lockup will be more freeform like what you see here. Now, these are actually using the other typeface Rift, and some of them are using the typeface Bicyclette. And I honestly like both of them. I think both of them can work. Both have their strengths. With Rift, it's a lot more condensed. It's a lot has a lot more height to it. Versus Bicyclette, it's more of a wide typeface in comparison. But the cool thing is, and this is something I started noticing as I was playing around with it in my own exploration, and I mentioned this to the client, that both of these typefaces actually work very well together. And I suggested potentially using Bicyclette for the main typeface and then using Rift as a supporting typeface. And he was actually really open to it. I always wondered what those texts like ESTD means. So ESTD is established. That's the acronym for that, or the shortening. I can't remember the exact terminology for that. So ESTD is established. You can also do an EST as well. I like to do the 4-letter version so that it's a perfect, has the same perfect amount of digits as the year itself. I believe you can also do ES, like so ES 16. I also like to do TRD MRK, which is trademark. What's the name of the second font? So the font up here that we have, this is Rift. And you can actually see I included a little note here for each of these so that the client could tell the difference between them. This is Rift, and then this is Bicyclette. And by the way, I don't know fully if that is the way to pronounce this, I'm a total assumption. But the cool thing is, and since we're on Behance, I might as well point this out, Bicyclette is actually a free font on Adobe Fonts. I think Rift is as well. I believe so. Yes, I believe Rift is also an Adobe font. So you can actually use these for free. You can use them for branding, web, and things like that, which makes it even better. And that was one of the things I tried to do with that. Let's see. So the name here, let me grab this and I'll blow it up for you so you can see it on Instagram. This is the name of that second typeface. Bicyclette is how I imagine it's pronounced. Like I said, I'm horrible at pronouncing names, even stuff like this, so I could be wrong with that. But I wanted to blow that up for you so you could just take a look at it. So we see here that we've got the wagon wheel in this example. We've got that cabin. And the reason why we have cabins is because they actually have, at the Leaping Daisy Ranch, they actually have a cabin similar to this, and they're building more of them as well. Let's see, do you present all these versions to the client? Yes. So in the first round that I'm trying to do, normally a branding project will take about 3 rounds. The first round that I'm doing, no wonder I can't pronounce it because it's a French word. I'm curious if it just means like a bicycle or if it means something else. But in this first round, the first round, which I call exploration, my purpose, the thing that I want to do most, is to put as many examples in front of the client as possible. Now, not every single designer will do this. Let me jump into full video mode so we can chat about this real quick. Not every designer will go through and do this. Not everyone will go through and spend that much time on the actual, showing as many examples as possible. In fact, a lot of designers hate doing that. They actually go out of their way to specifically show either one example or maybe 3 examples. With that first one, I actually want to share as much as possible. It's something that, I found over the years, the first round, if you just show 3 examples, then there's a good possibility none of them will speak to the client. Or I like to show a lot of examples and even a narrowed down mask, because what you see on here, there's 21 or 21 marks that I put together. I did probably closer to 30 or 40 marks. When it comes to the logo types that I explored around 50 plus different typefaces for that. But you're seeing everything condensed down into the main ones that I wanted to share with the client, get his thoughts, get any feedback that I needed, and things like that. So I show a lot of examples, but I don't show everything. And I explain to the client, like, if we actually go back and we take a look at, if we go back up here, if we look at all of these, if we picture, 1 through 4 is one version. If we picture 5 through 9 is another version, that's 2. 10 through 11, 3. 12 through 16, 4, the tree, the cabins, and the last one, that's 7 main examples that we're showing here. Yes, sometimes that is overload. For this specific client, I knew it wasn't overload, and I knew it was good to show him all of these examples to really gauge where we fell on. So we first do the stylescape to get an idea of a jumping off point. That for the next round where we start creating stuff and we start sharing with the client, this is a way to make sure that what we created fits with what they're looking for. Okay, so I know a bunch of people ask questions up above. Let's see. Yes, bike. It is called bike. Final question before I leave. But if you wanted to, could you color the words? Yes. So everything that you see here is vector, so it's I'm easily able to color it. Do you present any sketches? So up above, we did share all the sketches for this round. And this allows, by showing all of these sketches, and by the way, these are vectors now, because I went through and live traced everything. By sharing these with the client, we can kind of gauge if there's any other directions that we want to share with them or that we want to go through. Let's see, what's your average turnaround time on your first round? Honestly, it really depends. This turnaround time was about 2 to 3 weeks, I believe, was the turnaround time. And a good chunk of this was actually done in the last week and a half. The one thing that I found is I try to go through and be open about any ideas that I put out. And then as I get closer is when I start to narrow things down. But yeah, so let's see. I think there was maybe a couple more. So how does your schedule with a client look like? It really depends on the type of engagement or the type of client. So for instance, with this project here, with this client, we tend to check in every week. And then we tend to have a meeting every milestone. With this project in particular, we're doing it hourly based, and we're going through and we're doing it almost like a monthly retainer where the client pays for a set number of hours per month, and that's the amount of hours that we work on towards whichever deliverable. So we first started this project in July, I believe. Yes, July. We put a certain number of hours, and that was what we put in for the strategy. It's what we put into creating the stylescapes, going through doing branding questionnaire, gathering all the information that we needed. Then in August, we worked towards taking that, synthesizing that information and the feedback from the stylescapes into actually putting together this first round of branding. So that's what it looks like so far. The next step is the second round. There's a good possibility that we might end up using all of our hours for September on that one brand or on that one round, and then we'll probably go through, talk to the client about adding subsequent hours to that to the next month's invoice, so that we can go through and start possibly working on a third round depending on how long this first round takes. Sometimes branding can be something where it takes a couple of weeks. Sometimes it can be something that takes a couple of months or even many months. It really just depends on what we're trying to do, on what the client is looking for, and things of that nature. Let's see. Any questions on Behance? Nothing on Behance. Will a recording of this be available later? Yes, it will on Behance. All of this is being recorded right now. So if you guys want to check it out later, those of you who are tuning in on Instagram, you can definitely do that. All right, so we continue on through here. As I was starting to mention before, I actually really started liking the cabin and how the cabin feels overall. I think that there's a lot there that really, it's like simplistic. It's not necessarily good for a mark, but it does add a nice design element, and you guys will see that again down below in some other examples. How do you present it to them? So generally what I do is I export this as a PNG, put it onto put it onto InVision, and then we'll jump on a call. If I can't jump on a call with the client, then what I will normally do is I'll go through and I will do a screen recording where I go through each and every one of these. I explain my thought process behind it, why I think it works, why it doesn't work, and then I share both the InVision link and the actual video with them so they can get a good idea of everything from the thought process, from which I think are a good direction, and then they can also go and share that video clip and the link with any other stakeholders. That way, no matter what, my voice is being heard in the room, and I don't have to go and schedule 5 or 6 different meetings with 5 or 6 different people. I found that has worked out a lot in the last few months that I've been doing it, and I would definitely suggest that to anyone who's trying to improve their communication process with their client without having to waste a ton of time scheduling meeting after meeting after meeting to hear the exact same thing. All right, so let's scroll down. So now we've been seeing a lot of Bicyclette and Rift. Now I wanted to show, see how, the naive line sans works with some of the marks. Even like with something like this here, we can see like this mark works with both a heavy set typeface, and it also works with the thinner typeface, like with the naive line sans. As we scroll down, we see, more of the thinner marks playing around. there's something about 34 here. I love this. I wish that it was a direction that we could go further with, but I also know that it's not going to necessarily work with what the client is looking to do with this. I think what I will end up doing is I will be sharing something like this on Instagram and on Dribble, maybe even Behance. It'll definitely make the case study for sure, but unfortunately, it won't see any light beyond that. Scrolling down through here, I even threw in this mark here that Damien put together, but ultimately, just like the others, it unfortunately got the axe. There's something, though, in also looking at different ways of showcasing marks and symbols. You don't always have to show it on top. You don't always have to show it to the left or to the right. You can also show it in a smaller capacity like what we see here in 39. Some of you might be thinking that this is a lot of exploration. There's a lot of stuff going on here. But the thing is I like to be very thorough in what I'm sharing with the client. And I'm going to share with you guys what the entire artboard looks like very shortly. But you're gonna see a lot of different things on here. Some things are similar to what we've seen throughout this whole page here, but some of them are completely different. Some of them I decided not to show because I knew they weren't going to fit, or that they were just variations on other things. The last part that I did, and this was something that wasn't asked for, wasn't expected, but it was something I wanted to do just to show how far some of these marks and symbols or design elements could be used to create simple badges like these here, or to create more designed, more stylized badges like these here. And I really like the idea of this layering effect. I like the idea that this almost is like a compass rose. And the client was really surprised by it. He really liked it. He enjoyed the fact that that's how far the brand could actually go, how it could be manipulated and crafted into something like this. So this is literally the entire thing that I shared with the client. And like I said, his initial thoughts, his initial idea, or his initial reaction to all of this, and I'll scroll back up through here so you guys can see if you guys are just tuning in on Behance or Instagram. Overall, he was really happy. If I remember correctly, he mentioned that he wasn't expecting this much and this quality, and so that makes me really happy to hear from a client that they're really excited, they're really happy about everything that they're seeing. Now, the one thing I will say about the way I presented this project is that this is different than what I normally would do. It's different in how I presented it. I tend to constantly change and update my process, especially when it comes to presenting to clients. Normally, I wouldn't go through and actually create like these boxes behind here to highlight each logo, each symbol and mark. But ultimately, I think it turned out really great. And I make sure, and this is the one thing that you should always think about when it comes to working on these types of projects, is that you should always keep some sort of system of identifying specific areas. So, for instance, each headline here has a corresponding letter. So with the type, we have letter A. With the marks, we have letter B. And then with the configurations, we have C, and then badges D. But then you also want to have a number association with each and every element. That's why you see almost everything in here having some sort of number reference, so that the client can go through later and they can say, I really liked, in the type exploration 1 and 2, or in the mark exploration, I really like number 10, 11, and 12. And so it's really easy for them to call those things out. In the past, I've noticed that if I put a bunch of stuff in front of a client and I don't tell them, like have some sort of number system like I do here, things get very complicated very quickly. Would you continue using this form of presentation for future projects? Yes, I would. Some of this is the type of stuff that I've already done in the past for projects, and there's just small little changes here and there. And so I definitely think that I will continue using this type of format. And for me, it's something where as we add color, it's just going to get better. We're going to have a lot more elements. I'm going to be producing a lot more design elements that we could potentially use here. But yeah, so this is overall the the entire exploration I shared with the client. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Let me take a quick sip of water. And then we will jump in and look at the entire artboard for this. And if you guys follow me on Instagram, for those of you who are on Behance, you'll actually see that I posted last night a big overview of what the entire artboard looked like. And there's a lot of stuff. Usually with these types of explorations, I fill an entire document full of bits. And in fact, I even ended up removing some from this specific document. I usually try not to remove some, but I sometimes will. Okay, so let's zoom out here so we can see how the entire artboard looks. And for those of you tuning in on Instagram, if you guys want to, definitely check out my Behance, behance.net/RockyRourke/livestream. So you guys can see a better view of this. But this is the overall artboard for this first round of Leaping Daisy. And what I try and do is whenever I make big changes, I tend to save out a new document. So for instance, I'm not going to be working out of this document here in the subsequent rounds. I'm going to save a Leaping Daisy _branding _comp -2 for the next round, then a 3, and so on and so forth. That way, everything that I created in this round can stay in here. And once the client gives me any thoughts and feedback, I can go ahead and just highlight everything I don't need and delete it and make space for more. Yeah, and do that so I don't lose any of that stuff. But, and so we can look at this artboard here and we can see where certain things got developed. So with this, the first part that I do with any type of branding project is I actually go through and I do the typography. And so for those of you who tuned in last week on the live stream, this is some of the typography exploration that I did. And I think there's actually a little bit more here. And then if we scroll up to here, these were the typefaces I ultimately decided to go with and to explore even further. Which of these would you say was the more conventional logo option given what you knew about the client? So I don't know if I would say conventional, but I would say the one that I knew the client was going to like most was definitely going to be 1, 2, 3, and 4. I knew this based on the stylescapes. The stylescapes influenced a lot. And if I wouldn't have done the stylescapes, honestly, I would have probably been spinning a lot more gears than I would have now. So when I first started this project, my initial thought from our conversations, from what I was thinking about, this was the direction I thought that we would be going with. Something like this. And so that's the reason why, if we jump back over these stylescapes, this first stylescape that I presented, I almost only did one stylescape. Let me bring this over so people can see it on Instagram. I almost only did the one stylescape. But I'm glad I did a second one because this one actually the client didn't go for it. I thought that this one was going to be the one that he was going to go with, that he was going to want to explore further. But he ultimately decided to go with the second one, which is almost an opposite in my mind to the first. So it's a lot of clean lines, simplistic, very simple. He really liked this logo here. And so in looking at this, I knew that something simple was probably going to speak more volumes to him than something that's more detailed, more complex. And so that's why when I went through and put these first ones here. Because if you notice, as we start with this exploration, we see everything goes from super simple and gets more complex as we go through, for the most part. And I was right in my assumption that he was going to go with something, he was going to go with this wagon wheel, as he's been calling it. So that's why I like doing stylescapes, doing that extra bit, actually doing strategy speaks volumes. Because again, if I never would have created anything like these right here if it wasn't for the fact that I did those stylescapes. And so if I didn't do the stylescapes, if I didn't do a branding questionnaire, if I didn't do a deep dive and ask him questions, then, you know, I would have gone this route alone, and we could have had a bad first brand exploration. So it is good to take that time and to go in and do this detailed analysis to figure out that this is not going to be the right choice. It's good to have this for contrast, but this isn't going to be the right choice, and something like this is going to be. Now, you can't always do that. Not every single branding project is going to allow you to do strategy, to do that extra mile to get something like this, but it's something worth selling to a client. And sometimes you're gonna lose. You're not gonna be able to do it, or you're gonna have to try and work that in to a already small budget. I just finished up a project that I can't talk a ton about yet. I will be able to talk about it later this year, towards the end of the year. It is with a client that I'm actually really happy I got to work with. But it was doing a branding project. Now, the client had a short deadline. The budget was very small, and we weren't able to do this. We did a branding questionnaire, but we weren't able to put together a stylescape. And with that specific type of project, we didn't need one. We already had an idea of what they were looking for. I think I may have put together a mood board, but I'm not even sure if I did do that. Have you considered doing something like a course going into more detail about the entire branding process? Courses is something that I've always thought about. I think it's something that would be very beneficial both to me and to everybody that follows me. The one problem with courses is that they take a lot of time. I do know that I do have on the back burner right now a course doing for freelancing, for getting started with freelancing, for building a portfolio and things like that. A branding process course would be something I'm interested in, but it's something that would probably be 2021, 2022. But the good thing is that I do these types of live streams where I go through and I talk about all of this. So if you have questions between now and the time that I can actually create a course, by all means, you can ask away. I'm an open book whenever it comes to anything involving process, why I do things, why I don't do things, etc. So if we jump back over here, so the typography is where it started. And then from here, I started working on just like, whoops, oh no, I zoomed way too far out, did not mean to do that. From there, I just started playing around with the abstract shapes here. Thank you so much, Alejandro. I cannot pronounce your name. I apologize. Thank you. That, like I said, a course is something I need to start thinking about because I am trying to work on increasing my streams of income. I get a small stream of income from doing live streams, YouTube videos, and other content. My primary way of supporting myself and my family is by doing stuff like this, doing branding projects and working through my studio. But anyway, so these were some of like the first things that I started developing, and it wasn't until I actually took a break from all this. Earlier, I was saying that some of the best things to do when you have like some sort of a, what do you want to call it? Creative block, artist block, is just to take a day away from it. For instance, I took a night away from it, and the first thing that I ended up creating after creating these here and this part up here was this, which, if you guys realize, this is ultimately what the client ended up going with, or at least it seems like that's what he's going with, is this wagon wheel design. So this right here, the only thing that was on this page was like this type exploration, a little bit of this, a little bit of that here, and then this was the next part, and then that bloomed into everything else that you see here. And so you never know what things are going to hit perfect. In fact, when I first did this, I didn't even like it at first. I didn't even think that there was any possibility of this being a primary front runner for the brand. it wasn't until I first placed it with this typeface with Bicyclette that I actually decided, you know what, this has legs. Whoops, let me zoom out so on people for Instagram. This is when I realized that this was going to be a front runner. When I first paired it with this typeface. When I paired it with this typeface, I instantly loved it. I instantly thought, yep, this is going to be it. This is going to be the one that I'm going to be pushing for the most. Now, if you guys remember these cabins up here, right? These all came from, let me zoom out so it's easier for me to find it. That cabin came from this idea here. Now, this is super simple. This was something that I had seen. I thought that it might be a cool thing to create for this logo. I knew it wasn't going to be like a logo, but some sort of design element. But this first round, it didn't work. It just looked, it fell flat. I liked positive negative space. It reminds me of some of the illustrations that I create. But ultimately, though, it wasn't a good fit for what we were creating. And so I just started playing around with it. Like I took a whole day where I didn't do anything, except for I did create this. This was something that I created just, off the cuff, spur of the moment, didn't even think anything of it until I started playing around with adding in trees and adding in the wagon wheel or even just the sun to it. And once I started doing that, it just completely changed for me. Then I paired it with, I think this was actually the first one I did, where I paired it with this type lockup. Then I was like, you know what, I like this, but you know what, it needs something up above. This feels kind of flat. Paired it with the wagon wheel and the sun, and I knew that this had some serious legs, and I think it still does. Like I said, it's not going to be a front runner for the brand, but I think it's going to look really good. Yo, Ryan! Ryan's on Behance is like, you're live! Hey Rocky, this is beautiful to see. How long would you say a board like this takes? Let's see. So this right here took, so let's zoom out so you guys can see the full breadth of it. Over here on the left for you guys just tuning in on Behance, this is the full deliverable for the project. And then these are all of the exploration. This right here, you could honestly fill this up in one day. But the majority of this was over the course of about a week and a half, 2 weeks, was the majority of what you see here. Actually, a good chunk of this came from between Friday and yesterday, to be honest. There's even more than I expect. Yeah, there's a lot of ideas here. That's the one thing. The one thing, and I always stress this, and by the way, I see Alejandra that you did post some more questions. 1 second, I'll address that in a second. The one thing that I like to do is I don't like to delete anything. So even if because if we scroll down, we look at these here, this is a perfect example of it. All of these are I've moved, through. I started with something simple like this here. I tried out with the width tool, playing around to make it a little bit more, a more interesting shape to go around it. I add some radiant lines. I add more radiant lines. I added like a color or a filled background to it. I tried to create a horizon line here. So instead of just going with this first one, seeing it didn't work, and then hitting delete, I went through and I explored more and more. And sometimes that can turn into some amazing pieces of exploration. Even this part right here, hated this. I hated how this turned out, but I love the trees. And then the trees were then added to this little cabin guy down here. So you never know what could create some inspiration for you. Hello, Juan. Thank you so much for tuning in. All right, let's see. There's even more explanation than I thought. They all feel solid. Interesting to see the two of you have that our negative dark mode logo. Let's see. I need to get into the habit of copying. It's a nice resource to be able to come back to. Yeah, so like I said, even when the client comes back to me with all the feedback for this, and I'm guessing you're talking about maybe these up here and maybe even these illustrations down here. When the client comes back to me and gives me thoughts and feedback on this, none of this, even the stuff that didn't get selected, is going to be deleted. I'm going to basically save out a completely new document, and then in the copy of this, the comp -2, that's where I'm going to delete anything that doesn't have to do with the overall concept that we're going with. So like all this additional type exploration is going to go. All of these down here are probably going to go, and everything. So that's kind of like what's going to happen there. Let's see. Are you able to keep your work this organized from start while you create all of this, or does it go through a big reorganization before you get to share it? I mean, so ultimately, like all of this, what you see here, this is how it ultimately works. Sometimes what happens is some things are bigger than others. So you can see here, like for reference, see how big these elements are up above here. Like these are pretty big, and then when you go down here, these things are really small. The only reorganization I do throughout this whole process is just highlight things, shrink them down, making sure that the transform line stroke weight is turned on, and that way I can just keep creating new space for myself to work in. Let's see. Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Thanks so much for tuning in, by the way, Ryan. It's great to see you. By the way, Ryan, please let me know if the video quality is good. You know, new computer, so it's like I probably need to go back through and re-update some settings and everything. I am going to be adding some. Why I have a brain fart today? I don't know why. I'm going to be manipulating this a lot more today. We don't have the big, bright, beautiful lights on today. And that's because when I started the stream, I had a little bit of a headache, and so I couldn't get everything set up. But moving forward, we will be having a lot more lights in here. It will be more colorful and a lot more fun. Burping is a hazard when you drink Perrier. But yeah, so that is the bulk of what we did for this overall exploration. We're actually about to hit the 1 hour mark. I'm opening everything up to questions. I see on Behance, we got 23 people. That's the most people I've ever had here on Behance with me doing a live stream by myself. That is awesome. That is amazing. We got 8 people tuning in on Instagram as well. So I'm going to open it up to questions. If anybody has any questions at all about process, about what I use to create certain things, or any specific marks or anything, please feel free to ask away. Ask any questions that you would like. And update. There we go. Thanks so much, Ryan. All right. But yeah, overall, the thing that I'm most excited about, it's the reason why I decided to jump in here and do this live stream today, was overall I was really excited about everything that we ended up creating for Leaping Daisy. I think that when it comes to round 1 branding, this is by far the most exciting, most interesting one that I did. And to see how everything came together, it just really makes me excited, and it makes me happy to know that, number 1, I am as good as people say. But 2, that I was able to create something that the client was happy about, that he was excited about, and that we're going to keep creating amazing stuff together for this brand overall. So I'm really excited about it. I hope you guys are too. And what we're going to do is there's going to be more streams in the near future, and it's going to be my goal to start sharing. I wish I would have done a couple live streams when I was going through and even just setting up this document, because I think it's fun for you guys to see me actually creating it versus just talking about it on one of these live streams. Sorry about that, my dog. He probably hears his mom out in the living room and is like, why isn't she in here? But yeah, I mean, overall, I think this turned out great. Yeah, Brian's like, more streams. I know, that's one thing I'm hoping to do. You know, as we were getting this whole studio space set up behind me, I wasn't able to do any live streams because I was just trying to get everything set up. But now that everything's set up, now that I have my lights and everything, I have all this new stuff for the studio space. And we have another desk right here that we're going to be getting rid of. Let me actually go back to full screen mode and share it so that everybody on Instagram can see it as well. We're actually getting a standing desk delivered Thursday, and we have this big desk over here that we're having movers take to our storage unit. So I'm going to have a standing desk that's going to be able to be moved around the studio to do live videos. I'm even working on right now. Right now, I'm going to be I'm working on a Adobe Fresco tutorial and walkthrough, and hopefully I'll be able to also do a live stream where I go through and walk through and answer any questions that people have about Adobe Fresco. So that's really exciting. Ryan asks, "Oh no, my stream on Instagram ended. That's sad. Didn't even get to say goodbye to everybody." See, that's what happens when you don't pay attention on Instagram. Didn't you used to have a lot more plants behind you, though? Yes, so in the old space, I did have a lot more plants. I still have quite a few plants spread out throughout the whole studio space. Right now, though, we just have the one back there. Hoping to possibly add some more to it, but I don't know. Let's see. Download the video, saved. We'll share that. I'm just going through real quick. Let's see. Nope. Sorry about this, guys. Just going through and trying to prepare this. There we go. All right, perfect. Yeah, so hopefully I was worried. Okay, so 2 plants did unfortunately get massacred, unfortunately. Yeah. We had 2 plants, one of which, when we were moving everything in the studio, it actually fell. There was an avalanche of stuff, and it fell, and a bunch of books fell on top of it, and unfortunately crushed it. So it did not make it. I'm sad to say. And another plant, it just wasn't doing very well in the old studio, and it just was dying, and there was nothing we could do. But I still have in here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plants, and we hopefully will have some more in the near future. But I think that's going to be it for today's live stream. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I just think it's amazing that we had, I think at one point I saw 25 people in here. That's the most I've seen in one of these live streams. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in. I will be doing more of this. If you guys are interested in following me on social media, if you guys don't, at Rocky Rourke on Instagram, on Twitter, basically on everywhere. Always remember to stay passionate, stay positive, and stay creative. And also be safe with what's going on out there in this world. Do what makes you happy, but do what is safe for you and everything. I'm going to be back on this live stream on Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. May even add another stream sometime either before or after then. But if you guys have any questions between now and then, please feel free to send me a DM on social media or on a message through here. I hope you guys have a great day, and please, create something amazing. Especially create something amazing that will inspire yourself. Ryan says, "I'm glad I caught a bit." Thank you so much, Ryan, for tuning in. Great stream. I'm looking forward to the future ones. Me too. I'm really excited about it. Really excited to be doing a lot more streams here on Behance, and hopefully getting that viewer count up. I think that'd be really cool to see it hit like 50 to 100. Let's see. Andrea, amazing. I love your work. Greetings from Mexico. Hola, Andrea. Thank you so much for tuning in. Ryan, do you have a Discord? I don't have my own Discord channel, but I am a part of the Adobe Illustrator one, I believe. I probably should maybe create a Discord specifically for these. I think that might be a cool thing. Do you think that would be a good idea, Ryan, to create a Discord specifically for these live streams? Is that something that would be, a good idea? I don't know. I've never done it before. I know that people stream video games through Discord, so maybe it is a good idea to have a Discord where I can also stream these through it. I don't know. Love to hear your thoughts on it. If you want, Ryan, you can send me a message on social media or on Discord itself, and let me know what your thoughts are. If you have any ideas on how I can maybe make these streams a little bit better, I'd be really open to it. Maybe we can jump on a call. Never know. All right. Awesome. Well, you guys have a great day. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I will talk to you later, and I will be back. All right, everybody. See you later.